Yes, it's Chris Michaels back from sabbatical. Having difficulties with my camera. I feel like I should be sitting on a couple of books here to try to elevate myself, but we'll try to press on, being the broadcast professionals that we all know that I am. I didn't show up last week. I left you hanging because I decided to go on a junket to Aruba. How about that? Now, I've been to many, many, many islands in the Caribbean. I will say this: if you've got a family, then Aruba is the place for you to go because Aruba has everything there, right? You just go out on the beach, and there are plenty of places for you to go. Nobody asks any questions if you belong to a certain resort or if you don't. I mean, you can go to all of the restaurants. Now, at the same time, it's an island on the equator. So if you don't enjoy the sun beating down on you about 5 inches above your head, then it's probably not the island for you. And, well, old Chris Michaels, I don't necessarily enjoy long walks on the beach at high noon. So I had my difficulties every so often. But I will say this: as being a foodie, I will make recommendations for everybody that is listening now. So break out the pen and paper, maybe record it. I will tell you a few good restaurants. First one, and I'll start with the lowest tier, by the way, La Avenue. It's on the main drag. It is a Belgian restaurant. When you go there, you order the appetizers. There is a smoked salmon dish or smoked trout. I can't remember which one. Absolutely divine. You must have this appetizer. Second thing you have to have is they have now I'm not a pork person. However, they've got this ham and cheese. Sounds simple, but they do it splendidly. This is one of the most flavorful dishes. It's simple, just ham and cheese, but the cheese that they have is just astronomically good. And of course, if you ever see something out of the ordinary on the menu, my first impression is to go, yes, got to get it. I don't care if it's ostrich legs. I don't care if it's alligator. I will order it. They had a crepe Suzette. So they lit this MF and crepe on fire, and it was absolutely divine. So that is La Avenue. That's over in Aruba, if anybody is taking a vacation anytime soon. So do not neglect to go there. It's on the main drag. It's a little bit off of the main drag, but you will find it. Then I went to the Italian joint. Now, this is probably well known to a lot of people because in Aruba, this is one of the places to go to. What their claim to fame is that basically they take an enormous cheese wheels, Gianni's, by the way, Gianni's, if you want to go there. They take an enormous cheese wheel, and then they take a spoon, they scrape out the sides of the cheese wheel, and then what do? They've got some cooked pasta, right? I've got a hair in my mouth as I'm doing this. They take some cooked pasta, and then they put the cooked pasta into the cheese wheel. They light alcohol on fire. Then they pour the fiery alcohol into the cheese wheel, melting the cheese, swirling all of the spaghetti around, and infusing it with the Parmesan Reggiano that they've got there. And it also is absolutely fantastic. So go over to Gianni's in Aruba. You can get a cigar while you're waiting. A pro tip for anybody that is a restaurateur that hates lines, go eat at the bar. There's never a wait. You don't need a reservation. Everybody is standing around like a bunch of tourists in Aruba. But guess what? You don't have to do that. You don't have to wait around loafing and making a spectacle of yourself. You just stroll right up to the bar. No big deal. And finally, I will recommend this so much so if you're in Aruba that I will actually share my screen. This is something that I've found, knowing that everyone, or knowing that I am a foodie, everyone here, right? This is a place called Invade. Invade is what they call a dining experience. How haughty can you get? Well, not haughty enough for old Chris Michaels. This is one of the best restaurants I've been to in my life. It is on I think, a condo complex, a condo property. But that should not deter you from going there. It's not far from the main drag, maybe 5 minutes or so. It's like a 5 to 8 course meal. Basically, you tell these people, I don't like this, I'm allergic to that. And the chef will accommodate you. I cannot tell you how good this restaurant is. It is absolutely fantastic. You should go there. You should spend the money. The menu here, I mean, you could just look at this. It's delectable. They go through all kinds of hoops to make sure that you are having an amazing time. They've got a wine tasting thing that goes along with it. But that's irrelevant. You don't really need to worry about that. You can get it. They make excellent cocktails. The food here, absolutely outstanding. They start you off with caviar. They round it out with the main dish being lamb chops. So, the lollipop lamb chops, right? But here's the thing. They cook the lamb chops. It's already been marinated for about 8 hours. That's the first thing. The second thing is that they wrap it up in banana leaves, and then they cover the banana leaves in salt, and then they cook it inside of that salt sarcophagus. And that is one of the best dishes I've ever had. They bring it out, they knock the salt off of it, and that's when you finally eat it. Because when you cook with banana leaves, you're technically supposed to bury it. But I cannot recommend this place enough. No, I have not taken one thin dime from any of these places that I'm recommending. This is just out of the goodness of my heart, a positive review. I know many people go to Aruba. Is it my favorite island? No, I won't say it's my favorite island. I would probably gravitate more towards Grand Cayman or Barbados. But nonetheless, I do recommend those places. La Avenue, I recommend Infini. I can't pronounce it properly. And Gianni's, just for the experience of having pasta wrapped up in cheese. All right, so that covers 8 minutes. But at this point, everyone has been streaming in and watching whatever we're going to watch. So there's been quite a few developments going on since I have come back. And I'm not quite sure where necessarily to start. So let's do the easy stuff first. Easy in quotes, by the way. What did we see over the past couple of weeks, past couple of months? We've heard 3I Atlas. Oh my goodness, 3I Atlas is coming into the solar system. And then we had all of this conjecture from people like Avi Loeb, who was part, or still is, part of the Israeli military complex. Somehow he came over to the United States in 1983-84 to work on Reagan's Star Wars defense. And magically, he is now being touted as a Harvard professor, and he is the utmost authority, and he has been the one that has been running up the flagpole. This whole idea that 3I Atlas, which is careening through the solar system, is actually some kind of malignant artificial intelligence, possibly negative alien object that is going to overthrow planet Earth, or at least elevate its consciousness. Yeah, okay, fine. So the question that everyone has to ask is, why is somebody aligned to Israeli intelligence trying to promote this narrative? Why is the mainstream media glomming on to everything this person has been saying? There is a narrative being developed. So we've got Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is on a podcast. He is talking, and he is saying, now, by the way, before I get into this, you could do an easy search, Joe Rogan. Look up Anton LaVey, head of the Church of Satan. You will find a picture of Joe Rogan and Anton LaVey rubbing elbows and having a grand old time, smiling ear to ear. This comes from early 90s, before Joe Rogan's career really launched off. So that's the pedigree of Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is quoted as saying, Jesus was born out of a virgin mother. Oh, okay. So we're on the right track here. What's more virgin than a computer? Ah, there we go. If Jesus does return, you don't think he could return as artificial intelligence? AI could absolutely return as Jesus. Okay, what else would we suspect would come from the mouth of a supposed Luciferian, somebody that was palling around with the head of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey, early on in his career? This also echoes what Avi Loeb has been saying. And Avi Loeb, being Jewish, he said, well, he's waiting for the second coming. He doesn't believe in JC, right? He doesn't believe that Jesus Christ was, in fact, the Savior and a Son of God. He says that, well, that's not the Messiah. He probably refers to Jesus Christ as that man. And, well, he is anxiously awaiting. Earlier on with 3i Atlas, Avi Loeb was around. Everybody said, well, we shouldn't necessarily discount the idea that the Messiah could be, in fact, artificial intelligence. So, do you see what's going on here? These people are trying to generate a narrative where AI, artificial intelligence, could, in fact, replace God. It could, in fact, replace your divinity, your divine connection to your higher self, to God, whatever it is that you want to call it. So you've got people like Joe Rogan with an enormous reach and an even larger bank account telling you that Jesus Christ, no problem, easily could be seen as artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence could easily replace Jesus Christ. And then you've got Avi Loeb on the Jewish side. He's saying, well, we shouldn't be deterred into considering that the Messiah could, in fact, be driven by artificial intelligence from aliens. Yes, he could be a techno Messiah. That's the phrase Avi Loeb used earlier on. So, for the love of God, you are divine, right? You are the perfect form of human being, right? We all know this. If you're listening to me anyway, you know this. But do not take this nonsense coming from the Joe Rogans and the Avi Loebs and the mainstream media that, oh, yes, God is in fact artificial intelligence. No, no, no. I want you to look up Gigi Young. Gigi Young, I've referenced her quite a few times. Gigi Young is one of the more brilliant individuals out there. She talks about the esoteric and also what's going on currently. She found an amazing clip of Rush Limbaugh from 2004. I mean, I listened to this thing. First off, I'm a Rush Limbaugh fan. I do model myself slightly after Rush Limbaugh and Don Imus, if anybody knows that. So I do appreciate broadcasting in that vein. But she found a fantastic clip of Rush Limbaugh talking about Mars. And Rush Limbaugh, tongue in cheek, gives you the elite circle's idea of what actually happened on Mars. But Rush Limbaugh, in his broadcasting brilliance, draws a correlation to what is currently happening on Earth today. And that is the hyper elites are basically ravaging society. And the hyper elites do not care about us. They do not care about Earth. They didn't care about Mars. And they will ultimately escape. And they will leave Earth to its own devices through subjugation and nasty policies like the Green New Deal and so on. I mean, if you listen to the whole clip, you can tell that Mr. Limbaugh actually had his finger on the pulse, not only in the brilliant way he decided to give the public this kind of information, but he was also tapping into the esoteric knowledge that these hyper elites actually pay attention to. And now you understand why Elon Musk acts the way he does, with, oh, we've got to get to Mars. If we stay on Earth, then that's it. It's the end of civilization. No, it's the end of the current civilization. I'll give him that. But there is going to be some kind of progression going on here. But it would happen to be more along the lines of ripping the Band-Aid off of the way the Earth is currently run. And once again, fantastic stuff. You have to go find Gigi Young, Gigi Young. Go look her up. She is, like I said, one of the more brilliant people out there. Okay, so we have got. Oh, this actually kind of goes along with my experience going to Aruba. When I went to Aruba, you've got to take your picture, right? If you go to the EU right now, you've got to take a picture. Your biometrics have to go on file. Your retinal scan, facial scan, fingerprints, all that stuff has to be on file with any kind of government belonging to the European Union. Obviously, the United States can't do that per se, so they force other countries to collect your biometric information, and those other countries, thanks to all kinds of wonderful intelligence agreements with the CIA and the NSA, those countries then sell that data back to the United States. And so your digital dossier is now complete. My goodness, what a time to be alive. Well, for better or worse, Mr. Maisie has given us some kind of advice. I do appreciate it. I don't necessarily like Mr. Maisie. However, it is still worth observing. 9 out of 10 agents are very nice about the idea that you do not have to have your photo taken by the TSA. And you can say, I'd like to opt out, and they will not take your picture. And they know the law. So that is sound advice, in my humble opinion. Now, the problem is that there are many other TSA agents that do not know what the hell they're doing. And so I've read plenty of accounts where people say that, no, I don't want a picture. Here is my real ID. Let's get the show on the road. And then the agents don't know what to do. Well, I thought that the real ID, being a federal identification document, was supposed to suffice. I should be able to go throughout the airport without a problem. Or if I don't have a real ID, I just bring along my passport. For some reason, I need a passport to travel within the country. I'm not going to get involved in that conversation. But you could do that too. Well, apparently there's a lot of problems with that. Apparently, a lot of the TSA agents are now saying that, well, we don't really know what to do. If you don't want to take your picture, we've got a bit of a problem because real ID just ain't cutting it. So there is some hanky-panky going on within the TSA, and we should be aware of it. In my humble opinion, we don't need the TSA. Hasn't really done much for us, and we need to start looking elsewhere for our safety at airports because this whole thing, in my humble opinion, is quite bizarre. We need to kind of get away from that. Okay, so 18 minutes in. I spent the first 8 minutes talking about my junket to Aruba. That's okay. That's why you pay attention to me. But we have to talk about something that's important. Mr. Bolden, Greg Bolden, who, by the way, is the one that pretty much runs the America Emboldened network. So if you don't follow Greg, I suggest that you do, or else. You can also follow me, C. Michael's Show, on X if you're not listening to me on X. And you can do all the rest on Spotify. By the way, before I get into that, Spotify, I had a fan, comments often on Spotify. His name is Jordan. And he said something that was quite stunning to me, and that was that Spotify has been dinging his comments. So he doesn't have a podcast. He doesn't live stream or anything like that. He just comments on people's live streams and their shows, me being one of them. And Spotify has given him a 3-strike warning with what he's posting goes against their policies. Now, the ironic thing is that I'm saying far worse things than whatever Jordan is trying to comment on, whatever he's trying to type out on my shows. So the censorship is there. And now I'm knowing this now, I'm practically stunned that I still have a show on Spotify. If he can't post a comment on what I'm talking about, probably verbatim, then beyond me. I'm touched. I'm protected with my delicate fan base on Spotify. Okay, so going to Greg Bolden posted this earlier today about 1 p.m. A Pakistani national terrorist arrested in Delaware with a manifesto and plan to attack the University of Delaware. Now here's the rub, right? Greg brings up a good point, and it has to do with the verbiage. Okay, so let's do this. I'll just read it, what Greg posted. On November 24th, Newcastle County Police noticed a vehicle in a park after hours and conducted a stop. They found Lukman Khan in the vehicle, and he refused to comply with orders. They took him into custody, and during the search of his vehicle, they found a loaded Glock 357, micro conversion kit for the Glock, a loaded 9mm, 4 loaded 27-round extended magazines, ballistic hard plate body armor, binoculars, laptop, and a notebook. Stop it right there. It's not a notebook. It's not a notebook. This isn't some kind of loose leaf journal talking about cooking recipes for Thanksgiving. This isn't some kind of diary where Mr. Khan is writing his most heartfelt secrets, assuming that no one would read them. This isn't Mr. Khan's book of manifestations. This is what I want for my future. This is what I think I should be doing. This isn't reflecting. It's a manifesto. It's a manifesto. Which also means that this whole thing is coordinated. That means that there is a network of terrorists within this country that are trying to inflict harm on American people. Now, why is something like this important? Because it is becoming very clear that the powers that be, the hyper elites, they want to sow discord within this country. And they want Donald Trump to declare martial law. It started with Charlie Kirk. It's bleeding over into Candace Owens, because Candace Owens has been talking about how low IQ Macron, president of France, has somehow tried to initiate a hit team against Candace Owens, made up of members from the international community. And there was supposedly, or supposed to be, an assassination hit against Miss Owens. And she's worried, naturally. But then we've got this story from Delaware. There was another story today coming out of Texas, not that far off from the story in Delaware. Now, the question that you have to ask yourself, oh, by the way, Washington, D.C., and the shooting of those National Guards members, right? The story, the main thing that you have to be asking yourself is all of this is occurring at relatively the same time, right? Why would they be doing something like this? This is not just some random person. The guy that made the attack in Washington, D.C., and killed that woman that was a member of the National Guard, right? He served in Afghanistan. He was working for the CIA. He was part of those death squads that would go around and take people out that weren't going along with the American policy over in Afghanistan. And now he's over here. How many posts have you seen on X of people saying, look, we've seen these bizarre Google searches. These Google searches, they're searching for the exact name of the shooter in Washington, D.C. They're searching for the exact name of the female National Guardsman victim. Now, the problem with those searches is that they've occurred before the atrocity took place. So who would be doing this? Who would be doing these kinds of searches before the event occurred? And how on earth would anybody know the exact spelling of these people? Both the shooter and the victim. And what's even worse is that you find out through these Google trends that a lot of these searches were coming from one country in particular, and I do fear it could have been coming from America's greatest ally in the Middle East, holding off the hordes, fighting them over there so that America doesn't have to fight them over here. Something is afoot. Something is afoot. These people let into the country under Biden, you think they weren't vetted? Possibly. I could buy that, especially if they're coming across the southern border of the United States. However, I don't necessarily think that these people coming from Afghanistan that worked with the CIA as contractors, I obviously believe that there were individuals within the Biden administration that knew full well who these people were and allowed them to come into the country. And you never really get out of the intelligence networks, whether you're quote unquote retired or have moved on to loftier pastures. You still work for them. So who is doing this? Who is orchestrating these kinds of events? Who is pulling the strings? Why? For some reason, we found out today, which I found absolutely astounding, by the way. Why did we find out today that Barack Obama's home in Washington, D.C. is part of continuity of government, supposedly? What is this about? Tony Saruga. Sources have confirmed the tunnels linking to the Obama D.C. home, purchased in 2017, are classified for continuity of government. Now, there were a lot of tunnels that were discovered. Tunnels, if you pay attention for the past 8 years, you know the implications of that against Obama's deep state and so on. They're linking to the Islamic Center of Washington, D.C., and that would validate Barack Obama's true intentions. Barack Obama, I do believe, is abusing his position as president or ex-president to somehow get himself into continuity of government positions and allowing himself the ultimate freedom to do whatever he pleases, including committing coups since 2016. So what is continuity of government? Continuity of government basically says there's some enormous emergency where the Constitution no longer could potentially be enforced. We're under nuclear attack, alien invasion, dogs, cats living together, total anarchy. And we need to make sure that the government is still in charge, and we need to have leadership in place. And in order to thwart anybody that is trying to destroy the United States, we need to make sure that the people in charge of continuity of government during this calamitous situation aren't known to the public, because if they are known, then our enemies could take them out too and totally decapitate the leadership of the United States. So we need this ultra secretive, extra constitutional group of individuals known as continuity of government to make sure that this country still runs on all cylinders throughout any kind of disastrous situation. How did Barack Obama get up in this? How did Barack Obama somehow get onto continuity of government? Assuming that Tony Saruga is telling the truth, or his sources are telling the truth. That's the real question. That totally says that Barack Obama is above the law if he is on continuity of government. It completely validates how Barack Obama, all of the rumors that we've heard over the past 8 years about how Barack Obama has been orchestrating Russiagate, Ukrainegate, all this stuff. He's supposedly the mafia kingpin and all this, all these accusations against Donald Trump. That totally validates why there has been zero repercussions against Barack Obama if he is part of continuity of government. Completely atrocious if that is actually true. I don't even know what they could potentially do about that kind of situation. All right, Putin, as we round it out, 30 minutes, holy smokes. See, this is what happens when you go on vacation. You got a lot to say. You don't know who else to talk to about it because everybody around you doesn't want to hear you jawbone about these kinds of topics. So you know what we do? We talk into a microphone and force you to listen to it because where else are you going to go? The best you can do is just turn it off. But Putin, Eastern Europe, what's going on there? You know, I've spoken about Eastern Europe often, and the problem is that no one else will, or not a lot of people will, that actually gain any kind of traction. So Eastern Europe, what's going on there? We've got the Ukraine. We've got the Ukraine. Colonel Douglas McGregor. He's one of the more brilliant minds, I would say, out there. He's on Judging Freedom with Judge Napolitano on YouTube at least once a week. Interesting shows. He's one of the few individuals that I do pay attention to. He said over the weekend that Zelensky, illegitimate leader of the Ukraine, has 1 foot in Kiev and 1 foot in Tel Aviv. Why would he say this? Well, first off, Zelensky is Jewish. Second off, Zelensky is probably going to use this whole notion of right of return to the homeland. I'm Jewish and I need to go back to the Levant because that's where my ancestors came from. No, Zelensky's ancestors came from exactly where he is today. That is Eastern Europe. However, okay, fine. Douglas McGregor is suggesting that time is up for Zelensky. It's time to get out of Dodge. Trump is tired of dealing with him. Putin is tired of dealing with him. The world, except the EU, is tired of dealing with his terroristic activities. So this is going to be one of those ways where he gets out of town and then nobody can touch him because Israel will not extradite Zelensky, no matter what kind of war crimes occurred in the Ukraine, due to Zelensky's policies. Now, there's something else going on in the background. We've got these negotiations between the United States, Zelensky, Russia. They're doing one-off negotiations in Miami and Switzerland. They're not involving both parties. They're not involving the EU, much to the ire of the UK and Brussels. But they seem to be getting somewhere. There was originally a 28-point plan, then it dropped down to 20 points, and then it went back and forth and seesawed. But here's the gist of all of this, okay? There seems to be something else beyond that working in the background. And Kim.com made an interesting post on X. Kim.com said, well, the Ukrainians are desperately trying to get nuclear weapons, and the West is backing them up. And all of these peace talks are merely delaying tactics, not unlike what Israel has done over the past 4 decades when it comes to trying to create some kind of Middle East peace. Basically, what they're trying to do, according to Kim.com's accusation, is buy time. Maybe the West won't give the Ukraine nuclear weapons, but what they'll do is they'll give the Ukrainians blueprints, nuclear technology, so that what happens is that they'll have Western contractors coming from NATO and the United States and the UK. Then they could build the nuclear weapons because they didn't give the Ukrainians nuclear weapons. They just gave them the know-how on how to do it. And we've thankfully got all of these Western engineers that allow the Ukrainians to have nuclear weapons being developed on their own territory. So yes, we're legally in the clear. We didn't give nuclear weapons to anybody. We didn't give them to neo-Nazis or anybody else. I think this is true. I think Putin knows it also. I think Putin basically gave Trump an ultimatum. We know what you're trying to do. And you either stop it or we're going to steamroll the Ukraine and we'll meet you at the Polish border. How about that? And that would explain why Zelensky came out today or the day before, yesterday, and said, well, we need a lasting peace. We don't necessarily need, a temporary peace. We need a lasting peace. Was Zelensky threatened in some way by Putin behind closed doors through third-party channels? I would suggest yes, especially if nuclear weapons are involved. And then Putin also came out today and said, well, the whole process was torpedoed by the EU. They've made unreasonable demands. They crossed red lines that they know is a non negotiable. And now this whole process is dead in the water. Sorry, it's over. I think a lot of people are worried about the implications of all of this. I think there are many people that understand the true risks that the UK and the EU are taking right now. And I saddle this whole situation in the Ukraine squarely in the laps of the British. I'm sorry to tell you, but the British are probably the most at fault because they're not out in the open. And they've had an axe to grind with Russia for the last 2 centuries. And they've been doing a lot to try and overthrow Russia since the 1800s. So I'm pointing my finger at the Limeys. Now, I do believe we're running on borrowed time because Russia is not going to take this lightly. They basically said, we've had enough. So you either rein in this moron or you people are just going to not be able to play with anything anymore when it comes to the Ukraine. Done, done, done. We are finished with this nonsense. We've done this for years. We've waited for you to try and come up to some kind of solution that will work for everybody, but it's not going anywhere. So that's my 2 cents on Russia. I'm sorry to tell you that it's going to be difficult to get out of this one because Putin ain't playing games no more. And I think, for what it's worth, Trump knows about it. I think that's what's really going on here. And Trump basically telling them, look, you got to sign the deal or there's no deal to be signed because you don't have a country. So hopefully we get some corrective action going on. Now, let's go to Venezuela. Ah, yes, Venezuela. Monroe Doctrine 2.0, Donald Trump and Hegseth, they're going to clean out the Western Hemisphere of ne'er-do-wells. And we're going to solidify everything we possibly can in South America, Central America. We're going to stop those dastardly drug dealers and the fentanyl coming into this country, blah, 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 so on and so forth, with a lot of bluster. Okay, you have to ask yourself a couple of things. Hegseth, the Department of War, and all the rest, the Navy, they're not stupid. They've got a carrier group. They've got aircraft. They've probably got exotic technology. I also read a headline today that the CIA and other covert operations have now been given the authority to kidnap, if not kill, Maduro himself. So there's always that. However, you're not going to take over a country of 28 million with 15,000 Marines. It's not going to happen. And if Hegseth and Trump think it's going to happen, they've got another thing coming. You thought Iraq was bad. You thought Afghanistan or Vietnam was bad. You've got no flipping clue what 28 million people would potentially do to 15,000 Marines. I do not care how many aircraft are in the skies. There was an ultimatum that Trump gave. That ultimatum has come and gone. Basically, Maduro said, sure, I'll give it up to GOAT. And what I'll do is I want safe passage to a country of your choosing for me, my family, and that's it. We'll fade out into the sunset. Nobody will hear from us ever again. That did not fly well. Trump is doing exactly what Biden did when the whole situation in the Ukraine and Russia erupted. They're just ignoring phone calls, no kinds of negotiations going on right now. And it is just descending into the pits of nonsense. However, There's something else going on as usual. We've got Jim Ferguson. Jim Ferguson is over in the UK. Once again, saber rattling. I mean, if you read this, right, it just sounds like Mr. Ferguson is in the middle of a wet dream, white knuckling his phallus while he's writing this. Operation Free Venezuela is now underway. Or maybe I should try and do it in an English accent. The U.S. ultimatum has expired, and every single coming out of Washington, Caracas, and the Caribbean points to the same conclusion. This is no longer a standoff. It's the beginning of war with the United States of America. Game on. The moment everyone feared and Maduro desperately hoped to avoid is now here. I mean, you could just see the guy, shorts around his ankles, writing this feverishly with one hand, fidgeting around, trying to get this out and posted. The guy loves the idea of war, loves the idea of bombing somebody. It's really disgusting. Now, what else is potentially going on with Venezuela? Well, we've got the natural resources, right? I believe this is one of the ways where Donald Trump is going to try to claim victory before the midterms, to take over the oil reserves and all the rest. Now, what else do we have going on here? Yes, thank you to Grok. Reports from sources like the Atlantic Council indicate Hezbollah-linked networks operate on Margarita Island in Venezuela's Nueva Esparta state, involving real estate, commercial activities, and Lebanese clans tied to financing, drug trafficking, and regime support. This is part of a broader operation in the country. Now we're getting somewhere. Margarita Island. Margarita Islands looks like a tasty morsel for 15,000 Marines. We don't have to compete with 28 million people. Yes, this sounds like something that we could hang our hats on. Margarita Island. And then you've got people from the Atlantic Council. First off, whenever you hear the Atlantic Council, you automatically have to assume that these bastards want to commit some kind of war crime, start another war, get into nation building, starting to implement the New World Order and all the rest. And then when they say things like Hezbollah-linked networks, you know that phrases like that mean absolutely nothing. It means that somebody on Margarita Island read an article about Hezbollah, and now the Atlantic Council is trying to say, well, this person is Hezbollah linked. They read a news article about Hezbollah, so they're part of a dastardly network. This also goes to show you how beholden the Trump administration actually is to Israeli interests. Because this whole time, Hezbollah has been in the United States' backyard, and nobody cared. But all of a sudden, Miriam Adelson gets involved, and now we've got a problem. Now it's got to be Monroe Doctrine 2.0. Little Narco Rubio has to get involved. Little Narco Rubio is the one that is probably pushing all of this. Mr. Rubio is one of the golden children of Miriam Adelson. So naturally, he has an axe to grind with almost everybody. So, in my humble opinion, no, I don't think the United States is going to invade Venezuela. It's nonsense. 15,000 people, doesn't matter. Doesn't amount to a hill of beans versus 28 million. But Margarita Island is probably what they're going to go after, under the justification of eliminating terrorism in the Western Hemisphere. And oddly enough, it's linked to Hezbollah, one of the groups that are on Netanyahu's hit list. So you've got that angle as well. Unfortunately, I do believe that this administration is Trojan horse. It's not MAGA. It's not making America great again. By giving people like Netanyahu blank checks. I mean, let's be honest. Netanyahu is supposed to come to America again. I mean, he comes here every 2 months. I mean, what's he doing? Is he collecting rent from Trump? Did Trump create the ballroom or the Temple of Solomon blueprint for Netanyahu so that he knows where to stay in the White House whenever he comes to visit? This isn't making America great again. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Trump came in like a lion in 2016. And for the first year of Trump's presidency, he's been acting like a castrated horse. Looks nice, but he ain't going anywhere. He's shooting blanks. I'm hoping that at the end of this year, we're going to see a revert back to Trump 1.0, where we've got things like, if I was president, you'd be in jail, that line. And we start to get some kind of accountability for all these people. Remember, the Trump campaign promised transparency, and that's what we got. They didn't promise accountability. That's what we want. All right, that's it for me. 46 whopping minutes. If you like what you heard, if you're not completely offended, if your ears are not bleeding, you can subscribe to us, the America Emboldened Network on Discord, America Emboldened Interviews on YouTube. I've got my own YouTube channel too, Chris Michaels Show. I'm on X, C Michaels Show. I'm on Instagram, although I don't give a damn about it. I should give more damns about Instagram. And you can also find me on Spotify, The Chris Michaels Show. As always, I will reply to every single comment that I receive because audience participation is one of the most important things that a broadcast professional could count on. That's going to be it for me. It is Chris Michaels. As always, I will see you next Tuesday.